I think everyone who went through something and has their own story, it can be the most powerful tool they can have.
Welcome to another episode of Moving Forward, the podcast of the International Coaching and Counseling Institute, where coaching meets real life. And today I have Einat. Hi, Einat.
Hi, Noah. Nice to be here.
Very nice to have you here. Today we're going to talk about your life story because it does have a huge message for us all, for therapists, coaches, but actually for everyone. So really, I'm going to ask you first to introduce yourself. What is it that you do? And then we'll take it from there.
I'm a psychotherapist. I work using CBT, EMDR, and art therapy technique, which are all trauma-related tools of therapy. And maybe I didn't get there just by chance.
So I think we should start with your story. It's a fascinating story. So I will just let you tell it.
Well, it's always difficult to know where my story really begins. Um, I like to say that I lost my dad. I lost my dad 24 years ago, and also my dad killed himself 5 years ago. And
Hmm.
how can both things be? So when I was a young girl, I lost my dad in a very surprising way. But it was told me it was a natural death.
Hmm.
And I grieved over my father throughout the years in the very various and different steps of it. And 4 years ago, by chance, really by chance, I came to know that he died not by natural causes, but he took his own life. And I think
Hmm.
this is in many ways where my story really began, in
Hmm.
understanding fully of what I had been going through and experiencing, even without words.
So first of all, thank you so much for telling it as is. And maybe that's the time to say to people who are listening that because of the nature of the story, um, we put a disclaimer that we are going to talk about death by suicide, committing suicide. And if this is too hard for you to carry on hearing, please stop. And if needed, also get some help. Um, so that's it. Please take care of yourself when you're listening to us. And I'll let you tell the rest of the story, Einat. So, but just before you go on, so really the way you see it is that you lost your dad over 20 years ago. You thought it was because of natural causes, but actually, in fact, many years later, you found out that he killed himself.
Yeah,
Hmm. And this is why you're saying, I lost him twice.
I grieved over it twice. It
Yeah.
was, yeah, it's two different stories in a way. When I was a young girl,
How old were you?
I was 15 years old when he
Hmm.
died. Um, I remember it was very surprising and it was a very painful process of grief to the extent where I didn't understand why I was so deeply depressed at the time. Like, it's
Hmm.
okay, I lost my father, it's a sad thing, I miss him.
Hmm.
But it was a very deep, very profound grief throughout that year. And throughout the years, I also realized from different stories that pop up through family stories or memories that I've processed throughout the years that my father was suffered from PTSD from post-traumatic stress disorder, and and it might be the main reason of his of him taking his own life.
And that's something that you gathered throughout the years, like after he died.
After he died, yeah.
Mm. What
Uh,
kind of father was he?
um, I have all kind of different memories of him. I think there's the healthy him and
Mm.
the not so healthy. Um, his more healthy parts were a very happy person, a very vivid, very lively person, very creative,
Mm.
incredibly gifted man. He could learn or study. He didn't have much means as he grew up. He had to work in an early age. He had to provide for his origin family, and he went through a lot of things. But he was very caring and very loving person. He was very
Mm.
creative, and I think the gift of art was granted to me by him
Yeah.
to paint a lot together. We used to make art shows at home.
Wow.
Yeah, it was actually these are very sweet memories of him, you know. We used to
Mm.
paint together and then place all the paintings and take a few step backwards and look
Oh,
and
nice.
talk a little bit. I think I have a memory where we both painted and then we did the little show that we used to do. And we had a small dog, really sweet, sweet dog. And she kind of found like some kind of a marker or something. And she brought the marker and she put it in our show.
Wow. To be part of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was very moving. Like like she said, this is something very important that happened here, and
Mm.
I'm acknowledging it, and I'm being part of it. So it was very profound and very meaningful moments for me.
Mm. Yeah. The dad and daughter moments together with
Yeah,
the dog. Yeah.
yeah, very, very.
And I know that you know now that he suffered from PTSD, but as a child, a 14, 15-year-old, could you also feel that there is something wrong?
Um, well, in my book, This Happened to the Birds as well, I tell a story from my childhood, um, where my father picks me up from an art class, and I was a
Mm.
young girl, 10 years old, something like that. And I was holding in my arms a statue that I made. We worked on it from clay, worked for it for a lot of time. And we, next to my art class, there was a little mall
Mm.
that we went through, or sometimes we buy ice cream or just stroll around. And I kind of carried this statue with me, and
Mm.
people glanced and look, little girl with their statue. It's kind of cute and adorable. But my father, when he saw me with this clay statue, he said that when I mentioned that people are looking, he said, well, they think it's a bomb.
Mm.
Um, they think it's TNT, and TNT has a very similar material aspect with clay.
Mm.
Um, so I think at the time I didn't realize it wasn't, okay. I
Yeah.
just thought that people are not looking at a 10-year-old girl with a statue and maybe I thought they like it.
Yeah.
That's why people are looking. And
Mm.
I was like kind of trying to say with my eyes to other people, like, it's not a bomb.
It's okay.
It's okay. I'm okay.
Yes.
And I think
And
this memory
then
kind of holds both stories. Yes.
and so this is something that obviously you felt as a child, and that From what I understand from what you're saying, the TNT has to do with his trauma.
Yeah, I know that he worked a lot with bombs and bomb disabled. He
Mm,
disabled other bombs, so he was very aware to the things. And also, I think the mindset where you interpret this situation as threatening,
yeah.
where it is objectively normal and even sweet or kind, it's something that very much resembles kind of PTSD mindset,
Mm,
to see threats
yeah.
in like everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I think this memory kind of came up in my life, and to understand that the person that was the mediator of the world to me and for me to the world was in fact someone that not always could protect me or see the world as, safe.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously, you grow up with it. Um, and you're saying that in the year after he died, at least at the time you thought it's natural death, um, you really, it, it was a very difficult year for you, which is on one hand sounds completely normal, a 15-year-old losing her dad. But I sense from you, and I also know your story a little bit, that it was more than just the the normal, but also that you dealt with it in a very interesting way back at the time.
Yeah. One of the most interesting things about that year is a book that I read. And the theme of that book was, is it okay for a parent to kill himself? Is it ethical?
Hmm.
And it's not
Oh,
just a book that I read that year, it's a book that I read over and over. Uh, in the beginning, I learned it from the school library, and then I wanted to buy it, and I marked like pieces and sentences from it. So it was very important book that year.
hmm,
And I really think I really look at it backwards and I think, wow, like to be so, you have to really understand something so deeply to be finding or rooting out for those aspects.
hmm,
And the way I dealt with my father's death was I painted a
hmm,
lot, mainly. I think that's the main thing I did during that year. Um, I was very lucky and very fortunate, and also um, my father encouraged my artistic experience
hmm,
and wanted to me to study art, and that gave me a big place and a big space to create. I don't remember I did much schooling
hmm,
at that year. I literally remember handing over a paper to my teacher when I had no idea what was written there
hmm.
while I was writing it. I just hope it's okay somehow. It wasn't. But that's the best that I had at that time. But I could sit in my room hours and paint.
So, two things that are here is one is that you really took art and painting as your um, therapy. Is that therapeutic thing to do? Out of it naturally came out that this is what you chose to do. Um, I believe that you're right that it has a connection to your dad and him encouraging you. It could even be like that's the way we did to. That's what we did together. So I'm going to carry on doing it. But I also hear that this is what you remember, and everything else was almost gone that year. Like,
Yeah,
not important. What was important was that to sit and paint and put things on paper. Um,
I really feel that painting had a huge therapeutic aspect in me.
mm,
Um, First of all, it helped me maybe in the relationship with my father. It could have been, the vivid parts of our relationship.
mm,
It was also my own way in expressing sad grief, but also I remember I painted a lot with water, so there's something very teary, very kind of
yeah,
sad and about those, but not only.
yeah,
Um, I had a teacher who said, I feel like your paintings always talk about control and losing control.
mm,
It's such a beautiful way of understanding the theme of losing, your father. You lose a lot of control or a lot of sense of, stability in your life,
yeah, yeah,
things that
yeah,
are fixed. You have your home, you have your parents, you have your family, you have your school, all the things you kind of rely on. And suddenly, it's been just taken away one day.
mm, yeah.
And I
That
will
that's
also
solid
like,
ground.
and also, I think that's the most profound thing I found with not just art, but really as art therapy. During my years of studying art therapy as a student,
Mm,
we used to do a lot of paintings, to experience the therapeutic aspect of art, to talk about it, to kind of mimic art therapy amongst ourselves. And, I did all kinds of painting there. And one day I made this painting, this drawing, and it really felt like it is my drawing.
mm,
It's my kind of artistic language. It had that very, like the black and white strokes that I used to have. And the drawing was a man, just a feet and on the edge of a cliff with
mm,
kind of feathers like wings, like the edge of the wings.
yeah,
And and the cliff seemed dangerous, looks dangerous.
yeah,
And I remember I was looking at that painting. I didn't know what I was painting at that time. I still didn't know, the story is a secret.
yeah,
Didn't know he killed himself back then. He just
yeah.
died. And I didn't know what this painting meant. Just felt very connected to myself. And I had this drawing with me, kind of in my mind, kind of I really liked it. I found it artistically, it was very interesting, very beautiful, very dramatic. Um, and when I did realize kind of the truth about my father's death, I felt I felt like the story was already known and told
Mm.
kind of subconsciously through this painting.
As if,
And as an art therapist, it made me feel like something you express something on paper or you express something, artistically or creatively, and you might not know what it means,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's part of you and it's important. And it
So,
maybe it's knowledge.
so tell me about the work you do, because like you studied art therapy. How old were you? How did you start work with it? Tell me that part. I'm interested in how you got to do what you're doing now.
I think during kind of my 18 and 19 years, when I was thinking about what to do, um, I came across art therapy.
Mm,
And the more I understood what it was, I felt like, wow, that's exactly what I want to do. It felt so connected to something I truly believe in,
mm,
that in art therapy is a different aspects. Um, there's art as therapy and there's therapy with art.
mm-hmm,
And I'm a huge believer and still am, and even more so today, that the actual kind of performing of the arts is has a healing ability.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and a healing aspect. And when I heard it's actually a profession, a knowledge base, something people, write about,
Research.
act, research, also perform in, hospitals and mental hospitals and different states of needs, mental and mental health needs. I just felt like, oh my God, it's exactly something I truly believe in. And
Mm,
I can develop it and learn more about it, and I like to learn. So it was even more exciting for me that it exists and it waited for me.
yeah.
So basically, as soon as I could, start, it's a long process. You have to do an MA, first a
Mm,
bachelor degree, and then art therapy as an MA.
yeah.
And I chose to do my bachelor in art and art education
Mm-hmm.
because I come from the field of art, and also thinking about doing any kind of degree that isn't, artistic in some way. It just didn't feel right for me.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit boring. And basically, I did everything I could so to start as an art therapist as soon as was possible.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky and very fortunate to study at Haifa University,
Mm-hmm.
just when I finished my bachelor degree.
So, and then you started working as an art therapist,
Yes,
and
you
which,
start to be a therapist the moment you enter school.
yeah.
As a student in the beginning, different places, and when you finish, of course, I worked in schools and kindergartens and different mental health um, facilities, and today mainly in my clinic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
But
I'm very
I think it's kind of maybe obvious to say, but what you told us about how you dealt with your dad's death when you were 15, you almost did it naturally, that healing through art. And then when you heard about the fact that this is actually a profession, it is possible to help people heal themselves through that. Um, you you basically took it and made it into what you do until today.
yeah. Uh,
So um, I wanna ask you um, about the family story, if it's okay.
mhm.
Um, why do you think it was kept as a secret for so long? What actually, what did actually happen with your dad?
Um, from what my mother told me, that when it happened, she didn't want me to know. She swore my aunts and uncles not to tell, and she um, thought with herself that when I grow up, maybe have a family and kids, she will tell me.
Mm,
Um, but she didn't tell me out of her initiation. Like it
mm,
wasn't her initiative to share it with me. Um, I think there's different aspect to why it was kept a secret for so long. Like
mm,
in a way, I can understand, also telling a girl that her father died is hard.
mm,
Telling her that he killed himself is immensely harder
sure.
and require explaining so many things that all in once seem to be very, very difficult.
Mm,
And I also think about my mother who also lost her husband. And I think about the shame, the guilt,
mm,
feeling of regret, maybe it was preventable in a
yeah.
way.
Mm,
Um, I think that in many ways the adult section of the story had to also do their own process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it kept a very long time. Um, I think because it was like my mother nature to try not to handle truth.
Mm.
It's very characteristic for her to try to make things, a little better over the edges,
Mm.
you know. She even said it to me one time. I like to make the truth a little, cushion it a little. And she
Yeah.
also said, Einat, you're not like that.
Mm.
Which I appreciate. She can see the differences between
Yes.
us.
So
Um,
you talk a lot about authenticity, being authentic, telling your story as it is.
mhm.
Can I ask you about that? How, you're saying now that even your mom can see it and she sees that there is a difference between her and you about it. Can you share a bit about that, your thoughts about that? Where does that come from?
I don't know where it comes from. I know it's really something that very characteristic to me, and I hear it a lot from other people.
Hmm.
For me, it's a natural state of being. Um, I think because throughout my life, people weren't exactly truthful with me.
Hmm.
I learned to notice a lot of subtleties
Yeah.
um, by being a child who tried to understand the world around him. In that aspect, I can share that when I told the truth about my father, like a lot of things I realized didn't sit right with me. Um, were related to, this little aspect of the story. So I think
Hmm.
it's something that I learned to notice when something a little bit off, when something is not, you know, when you speak with someone, we all have the things we want to share or don't want to share, and I think it's very legitimate, but it's not the same as not telling it as it is or hiding it purposely. It's
Yes.
very different things.
And I know that you are saying that this ability that you have of being very authentic, talking the truth out as it is, hard as it is, um, especially at, when you're working, that allows others to do that as well, to share open heartedly, and maybe even to go over difficulties of telling the truth, because the truth can be very hurting.
Um, I would like to continue what you said. The fact that you know the truth, as painful as it is, I find it to be much easier than not knowing. There's
Mm,
something about not knowing that is even harder. It's where anxiety can be. It's where, your worst, biggest fears escalate instead of
mm,
what it really is. And sometimes it's really bad, like you said.
mm.
But then we can understand ourselves better. It's where we can grow compassion
Yeah,
to oneself or to other.
sure.
Um, I know that as a child or as a grown-up, I really felt abandoned by my father. I was really kind of resentful and angry.
Mm,
And I kind of gaslighted myself. And when I think about it today,
mm,
why are you so mad? He died. This can happen. He didn't choose to die. Like this is something I said, but I didn't internally, I didn't buy it, and my anger kind of continues on.
mm. So what you're
And
saying really is that you felt it. There was
I felt
something
it.
there that, as a child and a young adult, you felt that thing without knowing. And then,
Yeah.
like you're saying, you told yourself all sorts of stories that retrospectively, when you're looking at it now, and especially with the eyes of a trauma therapist, you know that those thoughts told the true story. Only you suffered from it because you're saying, if I only knew the truth, all those thoughts that I really were eating me from inside of my, my dad abandoned me, etc. This could be avoided if you knew the truth.
I don't know about avoidant, but maybe different. I
Yeah,
still might be angry with him for
yeah,
abandoning me, but once I understand he killed himself, aside from the anger, additionally, I can understand slowly he really also suffered.
mm, yeah,
I could understand him much better. So he abandoned himself, first of
yeah,
all.
mm,
And I can only think about how difficult it was for him to carry on.
mm. But
And
also
that's
probably
something I
to
need
take the
to feel.
decision.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was something I needed to feel. And also give more space to my anger and kind of legitimize it. Yeah, you're right to be angry. Instead of gaslighting myself that he shouldn't be or didn't choose it, he did.
yeah,
It's important thing to say. What you felt was true,
mm,
and you have every right to feel the way you feel. And then I can give myself the chance to understand more things about the story.
mm, yeah. So, how did you find out?
It was so really funny, really. My husband took my kid to his after school program.
Mm,
And my cousin and her son were the same kind of taekwondo class.
mm-hmm,
And they chit-chatted. And I don't know how it came up, in what context that, and she said she's really sorry about my father and everything that happened. And she mentioned him committing suicide. And my husband
mm,
didn't know that. And he definitely knew that I didn't know.
yeah,
And he kind of confronted my mother about
mm,
it to know if that's really true, if that's really the case. And
mm,
he wanted her to be the one to tell me. So it was a process with my mother,
yeah,
who found it difficult to handle this kind of emotional kind of story.
mm,
And then they've told me, kind of, my mother told me in my husband presence, and
mm,
him working in the background for that to happen.
yeah, yeah.
It's something
And
I kind of truly appreciate about him.
sure, sounds
Yeah.
like he was
I-
really on your side there. And
yeah.
I'm sure, knowing you, he knew that you need to know the truth.
Yeah. And I think
Mm,
he knew I can handle it.
yeah, yeah. Um, and then what happened since then?
I think the moment I realized, I reread the book that I told you about.
Yes.
I looked at all the things I marked, and
Hmm.
I realized how much I kind of sensed throughout the years, and a lot of things started to connect and to click. This is the reason I started with writing my book.
Hmm.
A lot of poems kind of emerged, like a lot of words came out.
Hmm.
Suddenly, this experience was not something vaguely and artistic and mysterious. And no, it had word, it had process, and it could be really landed in something I could say to
Hmm.
myself, to others.
So maybe
And
that's the time to tell our audience that you published a book with poems that you wrote and with drawings that you created over the years,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, I kind of matched the stories, the experience as I can tell it in words, along with the experience it had all over the years, which was very vague, which more of an emotional experience.
Mm,
And when I worked with my editor, when we finished all the poems together, we kind of opened all the paintings, kind of put it all on the on the rug and started
mm,
to match poems and art. And it was
mm,
a very beautiful experience for me. First of all, because I had this kind of vision for every drawing from,
mm.
what I thought at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And she looked at him, everything so fresh, and suddenly she said, and Joyce, I didn't like you. And I was like, no, that's not that one. And then she said, no, but with this poem, I remember they're like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, they are kind of the yin and yang of one another.
Yes.
And they really kind of, and the whole experience was very whole for me.
In other words, the the process of publishing the book, of
Hmm.
creating something out of your creations from over the years and making something meaningful out of it, that was meaningful for you as well. Like the act of creating something tangible, a book.
Yeah.
Um,
I
yeah.
think, in art therapy, we call it sublimative action. When you
Mm-hmm.
take something very raw, it can be an
Mm,
emotional state, and go through a process and make it something.
yeah.
Um, a lot of time people discussing someone who's very traumatic and turn his pain and becomes a surgeon, or
Mm,
someone who's an activist, or so
mm,
it was in a way my way of kind of creating a sublimative action over the pain. And I think most of all, we said in the beginning, that we will talk about suicide, and it's very deep and heavy topic,
mm,
um, and it is. But I also can see that there are so many still possibilities of therapy and addressing, ourselves, and not to be afraid of our emotional context, and being in a touch with it. I think this is why, kind of, if I think about myself as a therapist, and something that EMDR gave me a lot is the ability to be very in close contact with a lot of big emotional, physiological aspect of it, and surviving it,
mm,
because we can live a life even with traumas, abandonment, so many pain, and so many issues that we have to face throughout this very difficult life.
mm. So
And
maybe it
live in healing.
so it is time for us to start um, drawing some conclusions from our conversation. So, what are your main messages for people who went through something very traumatic? Actually, it doesn't need even to be very traumatic, but something big in their life. They have a story to tell. What are your messages to them?
I think everyone who went through something, and has, their own story, um, it can be maybe the most biggest strength and the most powerful tool they can have, being able to say it, to address it, to be maybe with time, certain modeling for others.
Mm,
I think, if someone had it easy and he's very successful, so, it's not very interesting. But if you went through something and kind of reached over the other side, you have so much to give and to offer just by your very presence. just by believing that you can overcome
Mm.
and that whatever you went through and whatever you were granted or not given uh, is not the things that will define you as a person.
Yeah. Yeah. And
But
that
there
you're,
might be
yeah.
the things that make you special and unique and actually, kind of your light to
And
others.
inspire, and exactly, that's where you can inspire others
It's the
by,
only way you can inspire others if you
Mhm.
hadn't had your own struggles.
Yeah. And it can be any struggle. And I don't know one person who didn't struggle somehow in their life with one thing or another. Not everything becomes traumatic. You don't always develop post trauma disorders or suffering after, but you really have a story. And that story, from what I hear from you, is first of all, listen to what you feel really. You felt it, you knew it in your body, in your mind, even before you were told that. You knew there's something there. You were drawn to that book, you were painting, looking back at it, you know that those paintings really symbolize the things that you knew, your body knew. And also to not be afraid to look the truth in the eyes. What I take from you is this is a very important message that you um, truth can be hard, but
It's harder not to know.
yes, hearing what you've been through in around 20 years that you didn't know exactly what happened, the pain there, and we said tell children the truth. Otherwise, they make up things in their heads, which some of them might be true, but some won't. But from what I hear from you, it's true for everyone. It's true for every person. The truth could be hard to digest, but not knowing or lies can even be harder to.
And take you on the wrong path,
Yes, 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 yes,
the path
yes,
that isn't really yours.
yes. Well, the truth takes you to your true self, your true story, your true self, your own journey, the journey that you have to go through, and that that's valuable in itself, right?
It is. I think that I really hope, when I talk about it, a lot of time people like, wow, it kind of takes a lot of courage. And I was like, no, it's very healing actually, you
Mm,
know? It's even kind of cleansing and
yes,
and it's a di and it brings people to a whole new perspective about conversing and talking about issues and and a little bit about the untalk about.
definitely. So, can I invite you to maybe read a poem from your book? I know you translated it to English, and I really appreciate it. Um, I
I'm
also
not sure
know
the translations are really good.
it is what it is. Come on, uh,
Okay.
you did send me.
Yeah, I need to open it.
Yes,
Um, you know, uh,
maybe I can share it with you
okay.
because we are recording on Zoom, so I can share. And maybe that first one at the top, if you can read it to us.
God have mercy, Father. I remember you on the porch, a book in your lap. When did joy abandon you? How did you reach to the asphalt as it ripples?
Wow, which I'm guessing is the story of your dad's suicide. Yeah.
Suicide act. I think that's the most, it's like a place I wasn't there, a moment I wasn't there. and
Mm.
still an image that, when you hear about someone's death, kind of pains you the most.
Yeah. Mm. Oh, yeah. Now that you're saying it, I'm thinking about it. Yeah, definitely. You remember it forever, the moment you
Yeah,
heard,
and I
right?
wasn't there and I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I think it's the most painful poem. And I do read it. I think the first time I read it out loud, I it was in a certain festival, and after I finished the reading, I kind of looked up, like, did you survive this? And I can hear the echoes, like, wow, wow, wow,
Yeah.
wow. Like everyone at their own time realized the imagery of it.
Yeah. Very strong
And
poem.
the fact that other people survive my story is also very healing, you know?
Mm. That you can
Yeah.
tell it and people survive. They hear it
Yes,
and
they
they're
hear it,
fine.
they feel
Yes.
it, and of
Yes.
course they move along because, they have their own issues.
Yes. But which I think is a message in itself because uh, and we could hear it about your mom. We sometimes we're being careful with what we're sharing with others. Maybe it will pain them too much. But the truth is that the more we will normalize um, telling difficult stories, the easier it will be for people to tell them as well and to accept that, yes, here is a very traumatic, difficult story. Um, but, and holding each other's stories, I think it's a very important act.
Yeah. Um, I think just well put, Noah.
So let's end with that. And I really would like to thank you so much for giving us your time, but mainly your story, which is a very moving story with a lot of messages there. Because maybe I feel we haven't emphasized that enough, but really, what happened to you led you to helping other people in the same way that you found help yourself. You found art, you found drawing, um, and then that's what drew you to help other people who are also going through very hard situations in life. And only years later, you discovered how painful and how um, traumatic was the moment that you lost your dad, and for what reason. And I think that's a message
And
as
also
well.
how powerful were the tools that I used as well.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So that is really a strong message as well, that trust yourself, that you know what you need. You
The
needed
soul
to
knows what it
paint.
needs.
Yes. Wow, Einat. Thank you so much. Really
Thank you.
very,
It was
very
a pleasure.
inspiring.
And thank you for listening to my stories and surviving them.
Exactly. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.